We're going to talk about working with databases. First things first, I want to talk a little bit about it within our web service that we're going to be creating later in the web services. I'm going to show you that you can actually return a data set, which is going to be displayed as XML with multiple rows. So the first thing we're going to do, though, is talk about working with data, how we're going to connect to our database. Well, the very first thing that we're going to do is set up a SQL string. As usual, we'll get rid of this for now. And you can see we have a select count star from the authors. This is going to go to the pubs database. You need SQL Server installed, and the pubs database is normally installed along with it. And you can just access that without any problems if you are going to be working with SQL Server. So we just do a SQL connection. This is going to establish the connection. That's the class we're going to be working with. Just like normal, instantiate a class to a variable here, and then we're going to work with a custom constructor to pass it a string, and that's going to be the connection string. And you can see we're just going to work with the local host. We don't have to specify a username or password. We're working with a trusted connection and the pubs database. So your connection strings can be so many different things. So the first thing we do is open that connection. So the first thing we're doing is establishing a connection. We know what the query is that we want to ask. And then we're going to create a command, a SQL command. Next step. That's the SQL command class. Instantiate that again. Command object. And then we're going to pass our connection to the command. And then we're going to pass our SQL string to the command. And then we're just going to execute scalar. And this is going to return the first column of the first row in the result set, and this is typical for something where you're only getting something like a count, for example. So that's a good way to do that. Cast it as an integer, and it's going to be an int here. And then we just return int out of this method. So if we were to actually take a look at this as the web service, we can just take a quick peek. All we need pass is the state. This is going to actually get the data set. So we want to look at the other one. We want to get the count, get authors count from state. And we'll look at this later as well. We're just going to pass in a state variable, a state abbreviation. We query the database, and then we get back 15. That's how many rows there are. So it's returning the count. We can close this, go back, and we're also going to look at this one. Now we'll look at the dataset version. We're going to pass the same California in there. And we should get 15 rows of XML. We're actually getting back a data set. We get the information about the data set here as far as our elements here, the names of the columns, and then we actually get the data back in the form of XML. So all you need to do is parse this, but in the .NET universe you can actually work with this data with ease. Note you're getting the row order as well and a bunch of other things. Very handy. You can get the whole amount of data that you requested right from a web service. So when we look at that one, you can see we're doing similarly, and this is a great introduction to working with databases. Again, SQL string, the connection string. We're going to create a data set this time, like we talked about. A data set is an in-memory container, and this is going to contain our data. This is disconnected from the actual database, and it's also going to be an XML document because it can come back in XML. And what we do is just create a new variable that's going to hold that instance. And then we work with the SQL data adapter. It's really a connector, which is going to be a bridge between the data set and the database. And these data adapters are going to retrieve from the database the information that's going to fill a data set. And then you can actually update those changes back to the data set, and that's going to send it back to the database. So there's a variable. We create an instance of that, and custom constructor here, where we pass the SQL string and the connection string, and then we do a data adapter here, fill. And that's going to fill our data set. And then we just return that. And you saw that was XML. That was straight XML viewed in the browser. And that's quick and easy. So that's it. SQL string, connection string, create a data set, get a data adapter, fill it, and we're ready to go. Let's look at another example of working with databases, this time in Windows Forms.